I'm Jim and this is Jim's Fix-It Shop, and we're going to put this differential together for this 42-inch machine. Now this one has a groove from the old chain because it had excuse me, it had too much side play. Now this is nowhere near worn through, so you don't have to worry about it. I've seen them so bad that they had a cut going through here around this big gear about to the bottom, where it was actually cut right through the cover. On this machine, when I get to that point, I'll explain how to get rid of side play and how to check for it. So let's tip this thing down and we'll get started. I've got a nice hexagon tube here that's in really good shape. Now this differential we're going to rebuild using some used parts. Here is his old gear. As you can see, we're to a knife edge. That would probably strip out pretty quick. And this is his sprocket in gear. You can hear that. I don't know if you'll be able to see the wear that's on there. If that goes much longer, I would imagine it would strip right out. I've got a nice one there's nothing wrong with these. I actually never seen him strip out like that. So we're going to put this one in here with a new chain. Whoops, before I do that, I want to put the bolt in that holds that. And the spacer. Whoop. Before I do that, I want to put the O-ring down. And the cupped shape washer, and it goes with the cup down. You want to capture the O-ring against the cover. Now we'll put the spacer on. Now we can put the sprocket and gear on and hook the chain up. Now on the top we want to put the next cupped washer with the cup side up and the O-ring. Now we want to put the gasket on. I always put a little Permatex on. Some people don't like it, some do. I just want to make sure this thing doesn't leak. And I probably should have my gloves on. You don't need a lot. If the stuff is new, I always buy a new tube, because once it starts getting old and getting thick, it doesn't want to spread real well. So I try to always buy a new tube whenever I do a job, and whatever I have left over, I usually throw it away. Now we can put the axle in, and as you can see, these teeth are much better. They're almost completely flat as if they were new. I got the thrust washer on the top and I've got a thrust washer on the bottom. Now a lot of people don't put the extra thrust washer against this one, and as you can see, the shiny spots on this one, there wasn't one on it. That's from wear rubbing on the gear. I usually stick an extra one in there and I don't have to worry about that wearing that out. Now we'll put a little bit more Permatex up here. When I do a video, I do not fast forward. So everything you're watching will be in real time. I've had some people, I don't know if they tried to suggest it or complain about it, but they tell me I should speed up on some of the spots that are, I don't know what you'd call it, typical, simple. But then I get a lot of other viewers that say they enjoy watching everything in real speed. So I'm going to leave it up to you. If you want to speed it up or slow it down, that's typically up to you. Now we want to put, before I do that, I gotta put this washer and lock washer on this bolt. Now, can I get everything back through there? Probably not. I think I'm going to have to take that apart. I want to make sure that O-ring is in the right place. It would be too easy for that to slip out of place. Totally forgot about it. O-ring, washer, spacer, gear, axle, washer, O-ring. Now let's try this again. Bearing. Voila. Now this nut is what they call a flange nut. It's got, I don't know, I can show it to you. It's got a built-in washer on it, and it's also self-locking. And we'll get these started. Now I had a viewer get a hold of me and he said, Jim, I got a big problem. I got my differential rebuilt and 3 of these bolts stripped out. Well, what stripped out was the threads in the cover. So I told him, well, don't worry about it. What you want to do is just put a nut on the back side and tighten the nut up, and you'll be fine. We're going to just jump around here a little bit and tighten these up. There's no real pattern to it, like if you were torquing down a head on a cylinder. And this is just about all there is to putting the rear end together. Or I should say the differential. When I get this done, we're going to move some stuff around. We're going to get the main case up here and start putting that together. Right now I'm just going to snug these up. And you are going to have to go over them a few times to get them, or I should say to keep them tight, because this cork gasket is going to compress and these will actually be loose. Or I should say become loose. So that's it with that. Now I suppose we could put this collar on. This is the locking collar for the bearing to lock it to the axle. It just goes on like that. You want to take a punch and punch that to lock it and then set your set screw. We're going to do that after we get it more or less assembled. Now we can pull this out of here and tighten up this nut. This is a 1/2-inch wrench is what you're going to need. Well, that one I thought I had 2 1/2-inch wrenches here. Oh, here's the other one. These are both 1/2-inch. Now some of these are self-locking nuts, so you'll have to wrench them all the way down. Some are not. But they should all be a flange nut. And we're just going to tighten that up. Differential is done. Now I'm going to clean this mess up. We're going to get the rear case up here and start getting this rear end put together. So I'll be right back. Hey, got the rear case up here. Now we're going to put the yoke on next. And as you can see, this has been replaced once because it's black. And it was already worn. So I welded this up and machined it down so it's flat again. And I've got the right distance in here. Now when you put your yoke on, the bracket is still bolted to the machine. You want to put the yoke on the left-hand side of the bracket as you're looking at it. So it goes like this. This is your bushing. Now you want to inspect these and make sure there's not a slot cut in here, because that will allow your yoke to move and not push your chain case into your drive disc the way it's supposed to. On this side, the bushing goes through from the inside out. And then put on your self-locking nut. Because these are not a shoulder bolt. You could over tighten them. This side, the bushing goes in from the outside in. And again, you put on your self-locking nut. It takes a 1/2-inch wrench and a small 1/2-inch socket. And you just want to snug these up. You don't have to be that tight. We need there. Now the next thing we want to do, now as I don't know if you've been watching all of these videos, but when Bruce brought this over, or even before he brought it over, he asked me, what do you think it's going to cost to rebuild this? And I said, oh, probably $500-600. Well, I got started pricing up all the parts that we needed for this job, and the parts alone added up to $800. So some of the big dollar items, I'm using some of my good used parts, like both axles and the hexagon tube. They're all 100 and something a piece. And the chain case. His needed all new bearings and a chain. This one, if you hold it and hold this tight and try to turn this, there is no wiggle in that at all. Apparently somebody has rebuilt this, and it feels to me like it has a new chain in it. So I'm going to put this chain case on this machine. Now we'll put the left-hand fender on, and again this one has a ball bearing in it. Now when you order some of these parts, they're gonna say they're bearings. Well, they're not really bearings. Most of this stuff is bushings. This one does have a bearing in it. Okay, I want to slide this in, I think, without the chain case in my way. I have a part here somewheres. Don't you just love it? This thing is such a mess. I can't find anything. I had it laying right here. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to go look for it. I'll be right back. Okay, we found this goofy part. Now this is the one I pulled out of it when I took it apart. This goes, I don't know if I can get you a better view without me being in your way. This goes on the end of the axle, and it goes into this bearing. Now I made the comment when I tore this thing apart, I've never seen that before. Well, that's because the other machines I tore apart that had bearings in them, this was a piece of steel, not a piece of plastic, and it goes right inside that bearing. So what we wanted, this is going to be a handful to get this all together. We want to get this in here. Might be easier to put that fender on last. Let's try that. Take this one off. We'll put this one on. I have to take off the thrust washer because it won't go through the chain case. We do have to grab a boot. Now I do not use the tan boots. These are nice flexible rubber. These are the ones I use. We'll put a boot or a clamp on each one of these. Throw that down on there. And we'll try to get this, we'll get this out of my, well, and get that in there. This is almost a two-person job. This is certainly not cooperating. I am putting new bolts in here because the other ones were just in too bad a shape as far as being rusted. That's working a little better. Now we're going to put on our thrust washer that goes in the end of the hexagon shaft. Put our little plastic spacer on. And we'll put this fender on. Well, I guess I better open up another boot. Now these boots are not different. The old nylon ones that didn't stretch worth a toot, one had a long end on it and this side was both short. They don't have them anymore. They're both the same. Almost dropped my handle. Loosen that up a little bit. And we'll slide this one on. Over top of that thing. Now we can put the fender on. Hope I'm not in your way too much. Now, before I get too far, I have to get this spreader bar in here. And this one's in pretty bad shape. I'm going to find a different one. Okay, we picked up one that's in really good shape. We're going to stick this one in here. And these nuts, again, use a 1/2 inch wrench. And again, they're flange nuts, so they hold on a little better. And let's see. We have the lock collar for this bearing. Now we want to put the linkages in here. And the brace that goes across. Now we might need a little bit longer 5/16 bolt. I got a bag of them over here. Menards and bought a bunch of nuts and bolts and washers, because these three up here have to go through this bracket. So this one's got to come back out. And we'll get a 1-inch long one to go in there. 3/4 might have worked. And of course our brace fell out of the way. I think we're going to turn this a little. Hopefully you can see something that's going on. I think a 3/4 will work. Try it out, find out. It does go through all the way. Yeah, we'll try to get this side on. Give me a little bit longer bolt to go back here. Grab a 3/4 inch one to put here. Yeah, we'll just snug these up a little. Okay. Not going to need them. I don't know where that one went. We can throw that away. All the old parts we're putting in a box and we'll bring back to him. And he can do whatever he wants to do with them. Now we have to put the shift handle on. That's over here. And we have to compress that lovely spring. These are 5/16 also. I'm seeing this has to slide. I'm going to put on a washer on this bolt. If I can get it on here with one hand. I did something a little different with this shift assembly. I drilled a hole down through the center of it. I put a grease fitting in it, and I drilled a cross hole. Now the cross hole has to be drilled through where this plastic bushing and this one here stop. There's a gap in there. That's where you want your cross hole, is in that gap. The thrust washer on, put your spring on. That goes in with that facing what would be up. And we'll tighten this up a little, because we got to put some pressure on here to get the handle on that spring. I gotta grab a clamp, and over here is my spring compressor. Now on this machine, now that I have a grease fitting in there, you have to use the adapter that comes with these with the hole in the end. That will clear that grease fitting. If I had it screwed in all the way. Back this off until that piece of angle iron hits the frame. And we can try to put this clamp on here. Really would work better if you had two people for some of this stuff. Now we'll grab a wrench and tighten this up. I want to say thank you, Rodney, for coming up with this idea. You want a thrust washer on the outside up against that plastic. Let me show you this. The plastic insert that goes in from the outside has a flange on it. You want to put a metal thrust washer on there, so this part of the handle doesn't chew that plastic all up. Now this is the hard part, getting this in. I don't remember how I wiggled it out of here. Finally. Now I gotta find my pin that goes through there. I think I'm gonna tighten that up a little bit more. And I'll see if I can find a pin. Okay, I turned you a little bit so you could see how to get this shift handle in there without taking the handle off. That's the easiest way to slide it in, but a lot of times these handles don't come off. You just want to slide it through here on an angle, all the way down to the bottom. And rotate it in. I really did have that in there. Works better up at the top, I guess. Slide it in at the top and rotate it around. Then we can put it on here. We'll put our pin through. Our washer. And the cotter key. Now if we release the pressure off that clamp, it'll stop this pin from rotating and you can tighten up your cotter key. And there you go. Next thing we want to hook up is this linkage. And I believe the nut is 1/2 inch. And to hold the bolt from rotating, because that's a ball in this bar, works kind of like a joint. And these also are self-locking nuts. I want to tighten that good. 1/2 inch on the nut, 7/16 on the joint. Now we'll put this down in neutral and we'll hook up this one. And apparently I didn't put the nut on it when I took it apart. And that looks like a fine thread. This one down here, they have a flange nut on it. I don't know why the big ones don't, or the long one up here doesn't. The short one has a flange nut. And again, that's 1/2 inch. Now I found the best way to get these boots on is when I'm doing this side, I shift it into 5th gear, and that compresses the boot and shoves it on all the way, which really helps. Get the clamp on. That's something that might help a little more. We'll put some oil on that thing. There you go. And we'll put some oil on this one. And we'll shift that into 5th. I've had a lot of guys say, oh, I got this thing together, it won't go in 5th gear. It's because the boot isn't on all the way. The best way to do it is just like I'm showing you, shift it into 5th. Now this side we're going to put the boot on the chain case, but not on the bearing, because we have to shim this thing, and that is going to probably be in the next video. So I gotta loosen that up a little bit more. And some of these can be stubborn to get on. Rotate it, you can tell if it's on all the way. And that is all that's to it to get this far. Now we will have to adjust this shift plate because I had it totally off, and I can see by looking at the tail on the chain case I'm way off from being in neutral. So until next time, please subscribe, work safe, have fun, and keep on snapping. We'll talk to you soon. So long.